Hey, welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, then welcome. My name is Maddie, and today I will be sharing the books that I read in October and November. I am wrapping up 2 reading months in one video because in October I only read 2 books, and so I didn't really have enough books to talk about to make an October wrap up, so I figured I'll just include my October and November wrap up together. In November, I did end up reading 6 books, so I'm really on a reading streak again, which is great. So in total, I have 8 books to talk about in this video, and I have a lot of 5 stars, which is good. I have just a few 4 stars. I have one 3 star, and I have a book that I did DNF. First off, I'm gonna probably start doing this at the beginning of some of my videos when I'm wearing a t-shirt, because I put on some of my graphic t-shirts just for these videos, just for like fashion. I want to look cool for the video, but then they end up getting cut off. So let's do a t-shirt of the day and just showcase my t-shirt that I'm wearing today. This is the one that I got from When We Were Young Fest, which I went to last month in October, which was awesome. And I wanted to get a t-shirt there, and let's sit up a little so we can show the t-shirt of the day. So it just says When We Were Young, and it has like an electric dog on it, all in pink. And then I will try to turn around. On the back, and hopefully it's in frame, it has all of the bands that were at When We Were Young. So really cool. That is my t-shirt of the day. And how about drink of the day as well? I'm having a classic Coke right here. Can't go wrong with Coke. It's my favorite soda of all time. So yeah, why don't we just get right into the wrap up now? So naturally, we're gonna start off with going over the books that I read in October, the 2 books that I read in October. And the first one that I read in October is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. This was actually one of the books that I had on my TBR for 2025 overall, and I finally ended up reading it, and I gotta say, I love this one so much. So this follows Olive, who needs to come up with some plan to convince her best friend that she is over her ex, because her best friend has been wanting to date her ex. And so she thinks that the best way for her to do that is to show her friend that she is in a new happy relationship. So while her friend is passing by her, one day, she decides to kiss the first guy that she sees in front of her friend, and unbeknownst to her, that guy ends up being Adam, who is one of her professors at her university. And so Olive tries convincing Adam that he should fake date her so that she can convince her friend that she is in a new happy relationship, and Adam does agree to it. From beginning to end, I absolutely adored this, and I have, of course, as I mentioned a lot of times, read Ali Hazelwood's books before, and I do really enjoy her books. But one thing I have a hard time getting a grasp on that she includes in her books is the talk around STEM. And I'm really not that much of an academically smart person, so a lot of the science talk in her books goes right over my head. But I felt like the STEM talk in this book was really well balanced with the romance, so it actually didn't bother me at all in this one. This romance is so cute, and it totally has the he falls first trope, which is a trope that I really love. Adam was so head over heels in love with all of it, and it was really something you could clearly see even when they were fake dating. He's a very tough to impress teacher, but I really love how he softens up when he was around Olive. He's like a completely different person, and I just really love seeing that soft side to him. The romance is pretty slow burn since it takes Olive a really long time to realize her feelings for Adam, and what I really loved is how she was so in denial about how much she actually liked him, because he is someone you don't want to like because he is just really stubborn and really hard for a lot of people to get along with. But Olive could not help feeling things for him because Adam just showed so much care towards her that she never really got from anyone else, that she just had to fall for him. And it was so freaking sweet when she finally just like let herself love him. I loved it so much. I kept saying when I mentioned this book in previous videos, I'm like, is this Ali Hazelwood's debut book? I kept saying I think it is, but I'm not sure. I did finally Google it. This is her debut book, which is impressive because for a debut to be this good, I mean, this book was better than even some of her other books that I've read that came after this book. This was a great debut. Very well written. The romance was very well paced. I loved it so much. I'm so glad I finally read it. I do know that this one is getting a movie adaptation. Don't know when that's going to come out. I assume probably next year. But whenever it does come out, I'll be sure to check it out. I'm really excited for it. So yeah, if you have not read this yet, I'd recommend it. Get on it. Don't wait to read it like I did. It was so good, so cute. Definitely a 5-star read for me. Next, the only other book that I read in October was actually a memoir, which, if you know me, I don't read a lot of nonfiction. But it's funny because I read one nonfiction book in October, and then I also read a nonfiction book in November. So hey, maybe I'm getting into the genre a little more. It looks like it. But I read this memoir that I had my eye on, and I'm so glad I read it because it was so freaking good. And that is Fahrenheit 182 by Mark Hoppus. And if you don't know, Mark Hoppus is one of the band members of the band Blink 182, which is one of my favorite bands of all time, especially right now. I've just been getting so obsessed with them lately. So much so. And I do have to say that's because I read this book. Like, I loved them before I read this book, but I am even like a bigger fan now after having read this book. It was so freaking good. So this one, it's a memoir, and if you don't know, a memoir is a book where the author tells their personal life story. And so in this one, we're getting Mark's entire story with him during his childhood, creating the band Blink 182, and everything that came after that. And I specifically wanted to read this book before I went to When We Were Young Fest in Las Vegas because they were going to be there. And so I wanted to read this book to have more of an understanding of like how the band formed, what were their roots, and to get to know more details about the band that I didn't know. And I'm so glad I did that because like I said, this book made me even a bigger Blink-182 fan. It was so amazing. I really loved hearing Mark Hoppus' story, and I appreciated how open he was in this book. He talks about, of course, his experience creating Blink-182. He also goes over his personal mental health struggles, and later on in this book he does discuss his experience going through cancer, which fortunately he was able to recover from, but that was really hard to read. So there was some deep stuff in this book. He also talks about the band breaking up for a little while and now they're back together, but there's a lot of drama that was spilled about the band itself in this book, which was kind of surprising because now Blink-182 is back together, and in this book, Mark just gives all the details of why the band split up, all the drama between them. I was like, oh my god, well, this is deep. And it was so interesting hearing Mark talk about Blink-182's beginnings of when they were just a small band playing for small crowds in like a small venue and doing like little gigs, and they were barely known, like only their family would show up and watch them. And it's just crazy because they went on to become arguably, I want to say, the biggest pop punk band of all time. And they are pretty much the blueprint when it comes to pop punk bands. Like, so many punk bands have formed because they have been inspired by Blink-182. Five Seconds of Summer, one of my favorite bands of all time, is one of them. They were heavily inspired by Blink-182. So many other bands have inspired them as well. Like, they are the blueprint. So for me to like read about their humble beginnings in the beginning of this book was like, it blew my mind. So this was so good. 5 stars. I loved it so freaking much. This is also a signed copy. I did get a signed copy that is signed by Mark, which I showed in my last book haul, I believe. Yes. Or I think it was the book haul before that. But here it is. So freaking cool. This book cost I think like $50, but I was like, I'm gonna justify it because it's a signed book by a band member, a member of a band that I absolutely love. So like, I just did it. So I'm really, really glad to have this. I'm really glad I read it. If you are a fan of Blink-182, I would recommend to read this because I think it's worth reading. It was so good, so personal. That's all I have to say about it. Just read it. Read it if you are interested because I loved it. So I guess now I'll talk about the one book that I DNF'd. I cannot remember if I read this book in October or November. I'm trying to think back. I can't remember. So I'm just going to mention it here now, I guess, before we get into my November wrap up. So sadly, I did DNF Red, White, and Royal Blue by an author whose name I can't remember because I don't have the book in front of me right now, but it's on the screen. I wanted to check this book out because this one is really popular in the romance genre. A lot of people really love this book, and so I wanted to give it a try. I had known about this one for a while, but I have always been like hesitant to pick it up because I know that this one revolves around the theme of politics and specifically US politics. And I hate reading about US politics and US history. It is so boring to me. I don't know if I'm the only one. I might be the only one who thinks that, but I am just not into US history. That was one of my least favorite subjects in school, was learning about US history. I love world history. I love learning about the history of other countries, but when it comes to the history of my own country, which is really funny to say, I think it's so boring. And so a lot of the like political talk in this book went way over my head and I did not care about it. And so I was afraid to pick this book up because I'm like, I don't like US history or US politics, so I'm not sure if I like this one, and that did end up being true. I just could not get into it. I think the way the romance was starting off, the relationship between these two guys was cute, but the book was just not pulling me in enough. And I think I got like 50 pages into it before I was like, I don't really care. So I put it down. But I do know a lot of people love this book. So if it sounds like something you'd like, maybe pick it up. This one is a romance between the U.S. president's son and I think it's the king of the UK's son. They start off as enemies. They don't like each other at all at first, but I guess eventually they do start to like each other. Did not get far enough at all to experience their romance, but this one is an enemies to lovers romance. So, I mean, if it sounds interesting to you, pick it up. It just was not for me, so I ended up DNFing it. Okay, so let's get into my November wrap up where things got more interesting because I read a lot more books in November and a lot of good books as well. So, I started off November with a reread, and that is none other than Kiss of the Basilisk by Lindsay Straube. I have talked about this book so much this year because I really enjoyed this one, and I had not thought about rereading it until I realized that the sequel for this book was to come out in November, and I was like, you know what? The last time I read this book was in May? Was it in May? I think it was in May, which is a few months ago, and unfortunately with me, I forget what happens in books really easily. So usually I do have to read the first book before the second book in the series comes out, and so I figured that's what I should probably do with this series. And I did not mind at all because I really enjoyed this book the first time I read it, and I enjoyed it just as much the second time I read it. It's still sitting at a 4-star rating for me. I feel like I enjoyed it actually even a little more the second time around, but there's still just one, like, I want to say it's a plot hole that bothers me when it comes to this plot, that it bothers me so much that I can't give it a 5-star. If that plot hole didn't exist, it would be a 5-star, but it's just like that one little issue I have with it that I can't say because it's a spoiler, but that's the reason why I can't give it a full 5 stars. But a 4-star is still pretty good. I'll quickly let you know what this one is about if you don't know. So in this one, it is a romantasy. We're following this girl named Tem, who is entering a competition to marry the Prince Leo. But Leo picks his wife based on how good they are in bed. And so the girls who enter this competition have to be taught how to be sexually compatible with Leo. And so the kingdom hires on these basilisks who can take on the form of humans to teach these girls in the ways of seduction. And so Tim gets paired up with this basilisk named Caspin, who teaches her the ways of intimacy. And their relationship starts to blur the lines between teacher and actually like having feelings for each other. But at the same time, Tem is developing feelings for the Prince Leo. And so this one does have a love triangle. Apparently, she does end up with one of them at the end of this series, so it's not like a why choose, but this one does have a love triangle, and the love triangle is actually really good. I used to not like love triangles, but the one in this one was really good. It was actually kind of refreshing because I hadn't read a love triangle in a while. It was just a really fascinating book. It's hella spicy. Do not pick this series up if you cannot handle spice, please, like, there's not even just like a little bit of spice. This is one of the spiciest books I have ever read, so just be aware of that. But if you can handle it, it's a great book. I'm really excited to read the second book in the series. I have it, I own it, I'm gonna read it in December for sure. I gotta get on that. So yeah, I was happy to reread this one again. Now moving on to a book that I haven't reread, and that is the nonfiction book that I read in November. And I had been listening to this audiobook for I think like 2 months. So I didn't technically read it in November, but I finished it in November. So that's why it's on my November wrap up. That book is The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. This book has gotten a lot of hype lately, this year specifically. So I really wanted to check it out because it sounded like something I would actually like. So this is a book that falls into the self-help category, and it talks about the let them theory, which is this theory that the author created where it's basically she just tries to be unbothered by others' opinions on what others are doing with their lives. It's basically a book that just tells you how to mind your own business, which is common sense, but the way that Mel Robbins gives examples on how you can use this theory in your personal lives is really like profound and really touched me, because I am someone who for a while I would let others opinions on what I do, my life choices, my lifestyle, I would let their opinions get to me and bother me, especially like throughout my early 20s, also my teen years as well. But this book helped me to understand that I only have one life, so I deserve to, and everyone deserves to live their lives the way that they want. As long as they're not hurting anybody, of course, be your authentic self and don't let others' opinions stop you from living your true life and letting you do what you really want to do. And so lately I've just been applying this theory to my daily life, like not even kidding. Like if I come across a situation where someone is irritating me, because I don't get irritated often, I don't get angry often, but sometimes, you'll encounter people who are just like grind your gears a little bit. So whenever I get into those situations now, I'm just like, let them say what they want to say and not let it bother you. Like, just brush it off. It's not a big deal. Or if someone has like an opinion on the choices I make, I'm just like, let them. I know what I'm doing. I know who I really am. I'm confident in my choices. I'm an adult. I can do what I want, So this book was just really helpful. It goes over like applying this theory to dating, which really hit me personally because I'm like in that boat right now. Also, it talks about coming to terms with people going in and out of your life, because it's completely normal for friendships to just like fizzle out if you're not in the same vicinity to each other anymore, which is something that I've dealt with a lot as I've had like several jobs. So people have just come and go from my life, and this book helped me to understand that that's completely normal. I just really think that this book could help everyone. Like, everyone could take something from this book. I'd really recommend to read it. If it sounds like something that you think would help you. If you feel like you're constantly bothered by people's opinions of you, read this book, because it will show you that you should just be confident in yourself. Don't let people's opinions bring you down and stop you from doing what you want to do, because it's your life, you're grown, you can do whatever you want to do. So I love this book. I gave it 4 stars. It's hard for me I don't really know how to rate nonfiction books, kind of, because I'm like, well, it wasn't like an epic fiction book, so I can't give it a 5 stars. So I'm like, I'm just going to settle on a 4 star. I think that's pretty good. Really enjoyed reading this. Really enjoyed listening to the audiobook. I would really recommend it. Next, I reread another book, and I wanted to reread this book in November because that is none other than November 9 by Colleen Hoover. I have made it my thing where I reread this book every November because I just have to. This book takes place on November 9th. So, like, I have to read it in November. And so I did. I forgot to read it in November last year, and I was really disappointed by that. But I did not forget this year, and it was a joy to read this book again. This is definitely, like, one of my top favorite Colleen Hoover books. It is so freaking cute. This book follows Fallon and Ben, who initially meet when they're 18 on November 9th. And they have a connection that is instant right away. Like, they are very much into each other. But the thing is that Fallon plans to move to New York City to pursue her dream of being a Broadway star. And so they're going to be apart. And Fallon really does not want to date right now because she doesn't want to be distracted with a boyfriend. And so because they have this really great connection that they don't want to give up, Ben proposes that they meet every November 9th for the next 5 years for one day. And he's an author, and so he thinks this will be some kind of inspiration for him to write a romance book because he really wants to dabble into romance but doesn't really have any inspiration for it. And so that is his reasoning for proposing this, and Fallon agrees to this. So they meet every November 9th for the next 5 years, and when they meet up again, they see how their lives have changed and their feelings for each other grow even deeper. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. This romance is so unique. You would think it wouldn't work because these characters only meet each other once a year, but it actually does. Like, their connection still remains strong even when they have like no contact with each other at all until they meet on November 9th each year. I'll be sure to read it again next November, and yeah, this one is still a 5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read my October book of the month book pick that I didn't read in October because I was in this slump, so I was like, I gotta read it in November, and I'm glad I did. That is Red City by Marie Lu. I have read from this author before. I have read her Warcross series, which I really loved, and that is a young adult series by her, and this book is her first dabble into adult, and she really nailed it. I really enjoyed this. So this is an urban fantasy that takes place in an alternate version of LA where there are several groups of alchemy syndicates. And we follow these two characters named Sam and Ari who have been friends since they were kids. Ari is from India and he was adopted by a member of the Lumines syndicate, and I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Lumines or Lumines. I have been pronouncing it Lumines, so I'm just gonna go with that. And he was taken in by this man in order to be trained to become an alchemist. As a teen, Sam approaches the higher-ups of the Grand Central Syndicate to get a job with them in order to help her mother who is struggling financially. Grand Central and Lumines are syndicates who are rivals with each other because they are competing for control of LA's resources on this drug called sand that can amplify an alchemist's powers. Sam and Ari were friends until they find out that they are in rivaling syndicates. Now they have to decide between being loyal to their alchemist groups or being loyal to each other. I absolutely love the young adult to adult author pipeline, and so I was very much interested in reading this adult debut from Marie Lu, and like I said, she just knocked it out of the park with this one. Her writing is just so lush, and the world and magic system in this one was developed so well. I really enjoyed our two main characters, Sam and Ari, and I specifically loved how their lives paralleled each other since they each joined alchemy syndicates in order to help their struggling families, because Ari's family, who lives in India, is poor, and so they had to sell him off to this man from this alchemist syndicate so that in exchange they would be paid for giving them an alchemist to train. And Sam's mom is a single mom who is struggling financially, and so she wants to join a alchemist syndicate in order to help her mom because the syndicate is paying her so much money to work for them, and so she can really help her mom by being a part of the alchemy scene. I really enjoyed their friendship as we get to see them together when they are young, and then their unfortunate falling out when they join these syndicates. Yeah, even in present day, they can't help the feelings that they have towards each other. So this book definitely gives off Romeo and Juliet vibes because it is a forbidden love. They cannot be associated with each other. They cannot really have feelings for each other because they're from rivaling alchemy syndicates, but they can't help their feelings. And I just loved the angst that came along with that. And I'm also a huge fan of childhood friends to lovers. So I mean, I was really, really into their relationship. I really love this magic system, and I actually did find it pretty easy to follow along with. The descriptions of how the magic was used was so detailed, and I really loved that because I could clearly envision it. I thought the use of alchemy was really unique because it's a sort of magic that I had never read about before. The way that the drug sand affects alchemists' powers is really cool because when they are on this drug, their strengths and or weaknesses are enhanced. For example, Ari is very charismatic, so when he's on this drug, people cannot help but be in awe of them. They flock to him and find him irresistible to be around. And so Ari is able to use this power to easily influence others. And Sam is frequently overlooked, so when she's on sand, she becomes completely invisible to others because people usually don't notice her in the first place. And so when she's on the drug, like they can't see her at all. I just thought that was so cool. Like, what a freaking cool magic system this world has. I love it so much. It was so unique. I do have two criticisms, and one of them is that I think that the conflict between Lumines and Grand Central are in over the sale of sand could have been explained better. It's stated that they have to deal with the other taking over their territory for sales of the drug, but I think this plot would have benefited from showing examples of that. And second, I was kind of bummed that the romance wasn't really present in this book. And it's funny because you see Sam and Ari in relationships with other people, but you barely get to really see them in a romantic relationship together. And I'm sure the rest of the series will go way more into their romantic relationship, but it just like would have been nice to see more of them together in this one. Like oftentimes they're barely in the same room as each other, and I still felt for their connection. Like I did when they were together, I was like rooting for them and I was like, "Oh yes, yes, things are happening." But there was like so little of that it was kind of disappointing. So, the romance is it doesn't really get going in this book, but I trust that in the second book in the series, we'll get to see a lot more of them, hopefully. I give this one 4 out of 5 stars. This was a solid first book in a series. I will definitely be continuing on with this series, and hopefully the rest of the books are great. And hopefully the second book comes out soon. I assume it'll be out next year. I cannot wait for it. Definitely pick up this if it sounds like something you'd be into. Next, I went straight into my November book of the month book pick. So I just knocked out 2 book of the month books back to back, which is great. And my November book of the month book pick was An Academic Affair by Jodi McAllister. So this one is a romance that follows Sadie and Jonah, who met when they were in university and have always been infused during their debates over their interpretations of poems since they are literary scholars. Sadie and Jonah are informed of a job position at a university that they both end up applying for, but it's Sadie who ends up landing the job. Jonah had hoped to get the job because it would put him in the same city as his sister that he wants to help after her husband left her and her 3 children. Sadie has a very close relationship with her sister, so she can empathize with this. So there's a loophole in the job contract that says that if the hire has a partner who is also in academia, they can have the job alongside them. Wanting to help Jonah out with his sister, Sadie gets the idea to propose marriage to Jonah so that way they can both have the job. Jonah does think it's crazy, but he ends up agreeing to it, and thus ensuing a marriage of convenience. And what starts off as a fake relationship for personal gain obviously starts to develop into something real. I was wondering if my 3-star rating of this book was too harsh because I don't know, I was like, oh, was it really that bad? But honestly, I read this book 2 weeks ago and I've already found it really forgettable. And so I think my 3-star rating was correct with this one. I had a lot of issues with the structure of Sadie and Jonah's relationship most of all. They were supposed to be enemies, but I was never convinced that they actually hated each other in the beginning. They kind of just fall into randomly being in love with each other and there was no build up to that, and so that just made the relationship kind of bland. There were cute moments between them, don't get me wrong. There were romantic moments in this book for sure, like such cute romantic moments, but the romance could have been better developed, so it wasn't the best romance I've ever read. I did like the family relationships and drama in this one. Sadie is very close with her sister until they hit a rough patch, where her sister cuts herself out of Sadie's life after Sadie tells her that her love for her is too overbearing, and we get to see how Sadie deals with that, and she does not deal with her sister cutting herself off from her well at all. And that in turn really contributes to Sadie's character growth. And Jonah also has a rocky relationship with his family that I found really interesting. Ultimately, this one was okay, but just sadly really forgettable. Like, I guarantee by next year I will have completely forgotten about this book, and that's really sad. But I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed parts of it, but there were some issues that I did have with it. So would I recommend it? I don't know. Probably not. That's all I gotta say about that. And the last book that I read in November is a completely different tune. I love this book. I just finished it last night, and this book was not initially on my November TBR, but I spontaneously just wanted to read it, and I'm so glad I did because this book is going to be one of my favorites from this year, and that is Never Been Shipped by Alicia Thompson. I originally purchased this book when it first came out in June, and I had planned to read it when it had first come out because this year I've been wanting to read new releases when they had just come out, and for some reason I just never got to this when it first came out, which is sad. And it's especially sad because I loved this one so much. I'm so disappointed that I sat on it for months, but I am glad that I finally read it. It was adorable, so let's talk about it. So this one follows Micah and John, who were friends when they were kids, and they both shared a big love of creating music. When they got into high school, they decided to start a band and they found a few friends to join them. The band took off after they landed a record deal, but then they ended up breaking up after Micah had been dating one of the band members and they ended up breaking up, so in turn that pretty much broke up the band. A decade later, they are asked to be one of the musical acts on this cruise that is themed after a hit TV show that they were featured on one episode of. They agree to it and start working together again, and John and Micah are rekindling their friendship after having been estranged for so long. For some reason, I had thought this book followed the second chance romance trope. That is false. This actually follows the friends to lovers trope, specifically the childhood friends to lovers trope, which was even better because the childhood friends to lovers trope, I think, is my all-time favorite romance trope. Every single time I read a childhood friends to lovers, my heart just melts and I instantly feel for this romance. And that's why I love this romance so much, because of this trope. Mix that in with a plot about a band, about music. I mean, you have a recipe for a favorite book of all time for me because I love music. I'm also someone who creates music. I'm very passionate about playing guitar and singing and performing. And I also love the friends to lovers trope. So, I mean, how could I not love this book? How could I not? And I did end up loving it. I loved every single one of these characters, including the side characters. I also loved getting to know all the characters that were in the band as well. And this romance was just, like I said, absolutely beautiful. That's the main thing we're going to talk about. I loved Micah and John from the start, and it was so unfortunate that their friendship fell apart after the band broke up. But I loved how they came back together so easily on the cruise, as if no time had passed between them at all. They just fell right back into their friendship, and it was super sweet. They had been in love with each other since they had first met, but they always felt like they couldn't confess that to each other because they didn't want to ruin their friendship that they had. But now in present day, they're like barely in a friendship because they're just like reuniting again. And so they're like, are we actually like friends? I don't really know because we're like just meeting each other again. And so they find it easier to be able to hook up because they're kind of just starting off on new terms. Whereas before, they would never even think about kissing each other or hooking up because they're like, oh no, we're best friends. We can't do that. But now they're kind of like, we're not even really friends right now because we're just starting to be around each other again. And so they don't really know what their relationship is. And so they're just hooking up just because. But obviously, hooking up a lot leads to them catching actual feelings for each other, and they have to come to terms with those feelings. There was so much angst between them and yearning and pining that I was on my bed reading this, and I was just like slapping my hand on the bed. I know a lot of people say when they like are really feeling for a romance, they start like kicking and screaming, like kicking their feet. I don't kick my feet. Like I literally just go like, that's how I freak out. I'm like that one meme where the guy is just like has hearts all over his face and he's just like hitting the floor. That is me. That was me while reading this. That's how much this romance affected me. Oh my god. It was just so adorable. I can't, like, I loved a book when I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I do not even know what to say. It was so freaking good. This is the first book I have ever read from this author. This book has below a 4.0 rating on Goodreads. I think it's sitting at like a 3.62, something like that. How? Excuse me? How does this book have a low rating on Goodreads? Sometimes I think Goodreads ratings aren't really accurate. I need to check what the rating for this one is on Amazon, because I think Amazon is a lot more accurate. Because how could so many people not have loved this book? I mean, I know opinions are subjective, but come on, this was so freaking cute. The care that these two had for each other was so sweet, and I found that even the most mundane moments between them were just so freaking adorable. For instance, they just be like having dinner together, and I'd just be like melting. There's this one scene where before Micah and John are going to perform on this cruise, she's putting eyeliner around his eyes before the performance. And even just that one little scene, that one little moment between them had me absolutely melting. Oh my god. There's this one scene where they are performing on this cruise, and Micah is getting so freaking into it. Like, she loves performing, which I love for her because I also love performing. Like, she's so passionate during it, and she ends up going over to John while he's like on his guitar, and she just like puts her hand into his hair and is just like singing to him like this. I absolutely lost it. Oh my god. I was like, oh my god. I was like fanning myself. I love these two so much. This book was amazing. I'm so glad I finally read it. Please read it if you love romance, if you love spicy, because of course this one is spicy. If you love friends to lovers, childhood friends to lovers, you gotta read this, please. Take it from me, if you trust my opinion, this was so freaking good. I adored it, and I will, without a doubt, be reading more books by this author. I actually ordered her entire catalog of books on eBay, so those will be coming to me really soon because I'm gonna read them all for sure. I'm so excited too because this was amazing. If I had not read Lights Out this year, that would have been my favorite book of the year. Like, not even kidding. But I mean, Lights Out is still probably going to be my favorite. But this is going to be in the top 5, without a doubt. That one blew my mind. Obviously, a 5 out of 5 star. I would say it's probably a 6-star book, actually. It blew my mind. So freaking good. Anyway, I'm glad we left off this wrap up on a really good note. Like, I'm so glad the last book I read for this reading month was so freaking good. We got one more wrap up coming in 2025. Next month is December, which is crazy. So I will have one more wrap up because I do plan on keeping up my reading streak. So I will for sure have a December wrap up. Anyway, I'm sure this video is long enough. So I'm gonna skedaddle out of here. Also, I forgot to mention, I'm looking at it right now. I have a temporary tattoo right here. I have actually temporary tattoos on my hands as well. I wore these at work for Thanksgiving, so that's why that's there, and I just forgot to wash it off, so that explains the squirrel that has been on my neck this whole video. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will be back with my next video next Sunday, so hopefully I'll see you then. Bye!